The impossible beginning. Emerges empire. On the barren, rocky surface of a distant planet, a human colony had been established. This was a place no one had ever expected to be the home of humans. Its conditions were harsh, its resources scarce, and its very survival was a question. But still, humanity had persisted. Against all odds, the colony, known as Empire, had emerged. The colony was a small outpost in a vast, desolate world, surrounded by alien terrain that seemed hostile to human life. High winds constantly howled through the barren plains, and temperatures dropped to freezing levels every night. The sun barely broke through the thick, gray clouds overhead. Nothing about this place was welcoming. In fact, most of the galaxy's finest scientists and explorers had called this place uninhabitable for any form of life. But humanity was different. When other species would have turned their backs, humans saw this as a challenge, not a death sentence. The leader of the colony, Commander Sarah Ellis, stood at the edge of the command center, gazing out into the storm. Her face was a mask of determination, her eyes narrowing against the strong winds. The howling sounds of the alien planet were constant, but they didn't scare her. She had heard it all before. "We can't keep pretending things will get easier," Sarah had said in a recent meeting. "We've already lost too much." Her voice had echoed in the hollow chambers of the underground base. The humans had managed to build the colony under the surface, digging through the hard rock to create a safe haven. But that safety was temporary, and the longer they stayed, the less hope they had of survival. Supplies were running low, and the colony's infrastructure was beginning to fall apart. The conditions outside had only grown worse. Alien creatures, like the savage Zoreth, roamed the wilderness, making travel dangerous. And their arrival wasn't the only problem. No one had expected the storms to last this long. Sarah had come from Earth's military background, a hardened leader who had seen her fair share of wars and battles. But nothing had prepared her for this, the responsibility of an entire colony on a planet that no one could understand. Still, she had never given up. "We fight for survival, not just for hope," she had told her team. Around her, the other colonists worked tirelessly. There was Dr. Caleb Winters, a scientist who had been investigating the planet's mineral composition. His work was crucial for any chance of survival, as the minerals on the planet could potentially be used to power the colony's energy systems. But even his optimistic research couldn't shield them from the harsh reality. The minerals were difficult to extract, and the technology needed to mine them was outdated. Then there was Lieutenant Kara Hayes, Sarah's right hand. Kara was a military strategist, and one of the few who had fully embraced the fight for survival. Despite the odds, she believed that they could turn things around. Every day, she trained the colony's defense force, preparing them for any possible alien assault. There had been close calls with the Zoreth, and their sudden attacks had left the colony on edge. But despite all their efforts, every day felt like they were slowly running out of time. Despite all of the effort, no one believed the humans could last long on this forsaken planet. Yet, Empire had survived. And it wasn't just surviving, it was growing. Slowly, humans had adapted, building shelter, creating makeshift farms, and forming alliances with other outposts. They found new ways to use their limited resources, but it wasn't enough to guarantee their safety in the long term. One morning, a loud bang echoed through the colony's walls. It was followed by the rattling of machinery. Everyone jumped to their feet, rushing to the command center. Sarah moved quickly, her heart pounding. Was this the moment they had been waiting for? The alien Zoreth had become more active recently, and the sounds they heard now could have been their footsteps, the sign of an incoming attack. In the center of the room, Caleb and Kara were already monitoring the situation. Caleb looked at Sarah, his face pale. "Commander, it's not a Zoreth attack. It's something else." Before Sarah could respond, a series of large, bright lights appeared outside, cutting through the planet's heavy atmosphere. A ship. No one had expected any ships to arrive. Not in this place. It was a rare event, and the possibility that someone had come to rescue them seemed impossible. But there it was, hanging in the sky like a promise. "We're not alone," Kara muttered, her voice filled with disbelief. Sarah's eyes narrowed, not out of fear, but out of suspicion. "Don't get excited just yet. We need to figure out who they are and what they want." Her mind raced. Could this be a friend or a foe? Was this the sign they had been waiting for, or was it another trick of fate? The humans had come to the edge of survival on their own, and now something bigger than them was approaching. Whether this new development would help them or destroy them was still a mystery. But one thing was certain. Empire, the human colony that no one had ever believed could exist, was about to face its greatest test yet, and the outcome would determine the future of humanity itself. The mysterious enemy. The ship hovered silently above the colony, casting its shadow over the barren landscape below. Its design was unlike any human craft. The sleek, metallic surface gleamed under the dim light of the planet's sun. It was a magnificent sight, but also an unsettling one. No one in the colony had ever seen anything like it before. Inside the command center, Sarah stood frozen, her gaze fixed on the screen showing the mysterious vessel. Her heart raced as she tried to make sense of the situation. Was it a rescue mission, or was it something far worse? Kara, ever the optimist, spoke first. "This could be our chance, Commander. If they're here to help, they might have the technology we need to survive." Sarah didn't share Kara's excitement. Her instincts, honed over years of leadership, told her to remain cautious. "We don't know who they are. For all we know, they could be enemies. The last thing we need right now is another threat." Caleb, the scientist, had been analyzing the data from the ship's signals. His brow furrowed as he studied the readings. "It's not broadcasting any standard communication frequencies. It's not human," he said, his voice low with concern. "And I'm detecting faint traces of something else, something that doesn't match any known species." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. The unknown could be just as dangerous as anything they had faced before. "We need to be ready for anything." In the colony's defense room, the sound of boots echoed as soldiers rushed in, ready to follow orders. Sarah quickly assigned them to positions. "I want everyone on high alert. We don't know what we're dealing with yet, so I need full cooperation. No one moves without my say-so." As the tension mounted, the ship began to descend slowly, its engines humming as it made its approach to the colony. The ground shook slightly with each passing moment, as though the weight of the craft was too much for the fragile planet to bear. Outside, the wind howled louder than before, as if nature itself was reacting to the arrival of this unknown force. The colony had long ago built a perimeter of defense, but would it be enough? The alien vessel landed softly on the rocky surface, its smooth exterior gleaming even in the bleak atmosphere. The hum of the ship's engines died down, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. "Stay sharp," Sarah commanded, her voice calm but authoritative. She turned to Caleb. "What's the situation with their energy signature?" Caleb adjusted his monitors, his fingers moving quickly over the console. "It's strange, Commander. The energy readings are higher than anything I've seen. It's almost as if the ship is powered by something entirely unknown to us." "Great," Kara muttered, her face full of concern. "Just when we thought things couldn't get worse." The silence stretched on, and every second felt like an eternity. The minutes dragged by as the colony waited for the next move. But no one dared approach the ship. No one knew what to expect. It could be an ambassador from another alien race, or it could be a beginning of something much darker. Suddenly, the ship's hatch opened with a soft hiss. The door slowly descended, revealing a dark figure in the doorway. The figure stood tall, silhouetted against the glowing interior of the ship. It was humanoid, but its features were obscured by the shadows. Its shape was unfamiliar, and its stance held an air of quiet authority. The tension was palpable as the figure stepped forward. The colony's soldiers tensed, ready to take action at a moment's notice, but Sarah raised her hand, signaling them to hold their fire. "Do not engage," she ordered, her eyes never leaving the figure. "Let's see what they want first." The figure moved slowly, deliberately, toward the colony's entrance. As it drew nearer, Sarah could make out some details: a dark, sleek suit that shimmered in the dim light, and eyes that glowed faintly. It wasn't human, and it wasn't from any species she knew. This was something new, something that could change everything. The figure stopped just outside the door, then spoke in a voice that echoed across the silent colony. It wasn't a language Sarah recognized, but its tone was clear, demanding. "Is that their language?" Kara asked, her voice barely a whisper. Before Sarah could answer, Caleb had already begun to analyze the sound. His brow furrowed as he worked. "It's a complex form of communication. It might not be a spoken language at all." The figure took another step forward, and Sarah knew that time was running out. Whatever this being wanted, they had to find out quickly. "Prepare a translator." "Now," she ordered. The tension in the air was thick. The mystery of this new alien visitor hung heavily over the colony. Was it an ally or an enemy? The unknown was always the most dangerous, and Sarah knew that every decision she made from here on out could either save them or lead to their downfall. "Stay alert," Sarah warned her team, her voice firm. "We've fought for our survival this far, and we won't stop now. But we need to be ready for anything." As the figure moved closer, the colony's fate seemed to hang in the balance. The humans had survived against all odds so far, but with this new mysterious threat looming at their doorstep, everything they had fought for was about to be tested in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The unseen hero. Inside the command center, the unknown figure stood motionless, its glowing eyes locked on Sarah. The silence between them stretched longer than anyone could bear. The figure's presence was almost too much to handle, as if the very air around them had thickened with uncertainty. Sarah's mind raced. Who were they? What did they want? But there was no time to waste with speculation. The safety of the entire colony depended on the decisions she made right now. "Commander, we have a translator ready." Caleb's voice broke the silence. He quickly handed over a small device that would allow them to communicate with the alien. Sarah took it and nodded to Kara, who stood ready to defend if necessary. The figure stepped forward once again. With a slow, deliberate movement, it raised one arm, revealing its hand. Sarah flinched slightly but didn't step back. She had faced enemies before. This was no different. The figure's gaze never left her as it spoke. "Human, survival is a fleeting hope." The voice came through the translator, sharp and deep, but not unkind. The words were clear, though their meaning left a chill running down Sarah's spine. It wasn't a threat, but it wasn't reassuring either. "Who are you?" Sarah asked, her voice steady, though her heart pounded in her chest. The figure's eyes flickered, almost as if it was considering the question. "I am an observer, but not like others before me," it replied slowly. "I have seen your kind struggle. This place, it is the end for many, yet you remain. Why?" Sarah didn't flinch. She had dealt with enough crises to keep her calm. "We survive because we have no choice. We fight to survive. That's what humans do." The figure tilted its head, as if contemplating her words. "And what if survival is impossible? What if you are destined to fail?" "Then we fail fighting," Sarah answered without hesitation. "But that's not your call to make, is it?" The figure seemed to study her for a long moment, then nodded once. "You are different. Perhaps that is why you have lasted this long." Sarah didn't trust the cryptic nature of the conversation, but she couldn't ignore the underlying truth in its words. The human colony had come a long way, but every day felt like a new struggle. The odds of surviving here on this alien world had seemed impossible from the start, but somehow they were still standing. Behind Sarah, Caleb was speaking quickly into his console. His face was pale, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Commander, you need to see this," he said, urgency in his tone. Sarah turned to him, and Kara followed, her hand still resting on her weapon. Caleb's screen displayed a series of images of the colony's surroundings, but there was something strange about them. Unnatural patterns, distortions in the landscape, appeared on the screen. It was as if the planet itself was shifting. This is impossible, Caleb murmured. The planet's core is stabilizing. Something is changing, and it's not natural. Sarah's eyes widened as she understood. What does that mean? She asked, her voice tight. It means the planet isn't just inhospitable. It's alive, Caleb said, looking at the screen in disbelief. And it's reacting to us. The very ground we stand on is shifting. This is not a natural occurrence. The figure's voice interrupted, cold and final. You are not alone here. There is a reason this planet has always been hostile. You may have thought it was a challenge, but the truth is darker. The planet itself is a prison. Prison, Sarah repeated, her mind racing to make sense of the words. Who imprisoned us here? Why? The figure remained silent for a moment, and then spoke again, its voice almost regretful. Not all your kind have arrived here by accident. Some have come to escape. You are not the first to attempt what you do. The weight of the figure's words hung in the air. Humans had made a name for themselves throughout the galaxy, but had they truly been pushed to this world by an unseen hand? Were they just pawns in a bigger game? Before Sarah could ask more questions, the figure began to move again, its dark form turning away from them. There is no simple solution for your survival. You must understand that. Your future is tied to the secrets this world hides. The figure stepped back, its presence still as ominous as before. It was as if it had dropped a heavy burden on Sarah's shoulders, and with that burden, it seemed to vanish into the darkened environment of the ship behind it. What did it mean? Kara asked, her voice filled with both fear and curiosity. What secrets does this world hide? Caleb continued to study the readings, his face pale with a mixture of fear and fascination. I don't know, but it looks like the planet itself is reacting to our presence. It's almost as if we've disturbed something ancient, something that was meant to stay hidden. Sarah's mind raced. The ship, the mysterious figure, the strange changes in the planet's landscape. None of this made sense, but one thing was clear. The colony's struggle for survival had just become more complicated. If the planet was a prison, and they had been unknowingly drawn into it, the fight for their freedom was far from over. She turned to her team. We can't let fear take hold. We need to find out what's going on here. We've survived this long, and we'll survive whatever comes next. But we need answers. The figure's warning echoed in her mind. Your future is tied to the secrets this world hides. Whatever those secrets were, they were about to reveal themselves. But would the humans be ready to face the truth? The last hope. The strange visitor from the ship had left, but its words lingered in the air like a heavy fog. This planet is a prison, it had said. You are not the first. The colonists were left grappling with the meaning of those words. What had they stumbled upon? What secrets were buried beneath the surface of this hostile world? In the days following the encounter, the mood in the colony had shifted. The workers, the soldiers, and even the scientists were filled with uncertainty. They had always fought to survive, but now it seemed like survival wasn't just about finding food and defending themselves from the Zoreth. It was about something much bigger. And that terrifying thought weighed heavily on Sarah. We need answers, Sarah said, standing before her team in the command center. We can't just sit back and hope things will get better. That ship, that figure, they weren't here by accident. Whatever's going on here, we have to find out what it is. Kara, always the warrior, nodded firmly. I'm with you, Commander. Whatever we have to do, we'll do it. Caleb looked uncertain, his mind racing with thoughts of the planet's strange behavior. If what the figure said is true, if the planet is alive, then we're dealing with something much more dangerous than we imagined. It might be controlling the very resources we rely on. If we don't understand how it works, we could be in serious trouble. Sarah knew that Caleb was right. The planet had always been unpredictable, but now, with the growing signs of instability and the mysterious warnings from the figure, it seemed like their time was running out. The question was, where did they begin? She turned to Kara. We need to find out more about the planet's history. If it's a prison, then someone must have built it that way. We'll need to search for any evidence we can find. Ancient ruins, hidden technologies, anything that can explain why this place exists. I'll organize a team, Kara replied, her voice full of determination. We'll search every inch of this planet if we have to. As Sarah left the command center, her thoughts raced. The colony had endured so much, but now they were faced with something far more daunting than they could have imagined. The planet itself seemed to be fighting against them. But if the planet was alive, if it was indeed some kind of prison, then there had to be a way to break free. That night, as the winds howled outside, Sarah stood alone in the darkened command center, staring out into the bleak horizon. The stars seemed so far away, distant and unreachable. But there was something else, something in the distance, far beyond the colony's walls. A faint glow, barely visible through the thick atmosphere. Her heart skipped a beat. Was it another ship? A beacon? Or was it the planet itself responding to their presence? Sarah clenched her fists. She wasn't about to let the unknown take control. Not after everything they had been through. We'll find a way, she whispered to herself. We always do. The next day, the team set out on their mission to uncover the truth. Kara led the expedition, along with a small group of explorers, armed and ready for anything. Caleb joined them, his scientific mind eager to analyze any strange occurrences they might find. But it wasn't just about discovering the planet's secrets, it was about survival. And if they couldn't uncover what was truly going on, their time on this planet would be over. Hours into their journey, they arrived at a location that had been marked on old scans. It was an ancient ruin, buried deep within the planet's rocky surface. As the team approached, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The air was thick with tension, and the ground beneath their feet felt wrong, like it was shifting in response to their presence. They reached the entrance of the ruin, a massive stone archway that loomed over them. The structure was worn with age, but there was something striking about it. Strange symbols were carved into the surface, symbols that no one had ever seen before. This is it, Caleb whispered. This is where the answers lie. Sarah motioned for her team to proceed cautiously. Stay alert. This place may hold the key to everything, but it could also be our downfall. They ventured deeper into the ruin, the shadows growing longer and more oppressive. The walls seemed to pulse with a strange energy, and the air grew colder with each step they took. It wasn't just the temperature, it was as if something alive was watching them, waiting. Finally, they'd reached the heart of the ruin. In the center of the chamber stood a large, dark stone structure, like a massive altar. On it lay a device unlike anything they had seen before. It hummed softly, its energy palpable, as if it were alive. What is that? Kara asked, her voice full of awe and fear. Caleb knelt down to examine it. This is something ancient. This device, it looks like it's linked to the planet itself. It could be controlling the very core of this world. Sarah's heart raced. This was it. This was the device that could either save them or doom them all. But before she could speak, the ground shook beneath their feet. The walls trembled, and a deep, rumbling sound echoed through the chamber. The planet was reacting. Whatever they had discovered, it had triggered something far more powerful than they had anticipated. We need to leave, now, Sarah shouted. But it was too late. The chamber began to collapse around them. The ground cracked open, and dust filled the air. The team scrambled for the exit, but the ruin's destruction was swift. As they ran, Sarah's mind raced. The device had been a key, but to what? And more importantly, who had built this planet, and why? The journey to uncover the truth had just begun, but now, with their lives on the line, the stakes had never been higher. The unexpected twist. The team barely escaped the collapsing ruin. Dust and debris filled the air as they rushed out, their hearts pounding from the near disaster. Once outside, they paused to catch their breath, their eyes wide with disbelief. The structure behind them was crumbling, but in the distance, the faint glow that Sarah had seen earlier grew brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. "What in the world is going on?" Kara asked, looking around, her weapon still in hand. The whole planet seemed to be shifting beneath their feet, the very ground trembling as though the world itself was alive. Sarah's mind raced. The ruin had held a secret, an ancient device that seemed to control the planet. But why had it reacted so violently when they triggered it? What had they unleashed? They had learned nothing about the device other than its potential to change everything. But now the danger seemed to be escalating. They were not just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to understand an ancient mystery, one that could either save them or destroy them. "We need to head back to the colony," Sarah decided, her voice tight. "Caleb, what did you learn about the device? Do you think it's still active?" Caleb wiped sweat from his brow, his face pale with exhaustion. "I don't know. But whatever it is, it's connected to the planet's core, like I thought. I've never seen anything like it before. Those symbols, the energy it emitted. It wasn't just a device. It was something far bigger, something controlling the planet itself." Before Sarah could respond, the ground beneath them shook again, this time with more force. They heard a loud, low rumble, and then the sound of something breaking through the surface, far in the distance. "What the hell was that?" Kara asked, her eyes scanning the horizon. "I don't know," Sarah said, gripping her weapon tightly. "But it's getting closer. We need to move." They turned to head back to the colony, but as they moved forward, they saw something they had never expected. A massive crack opening in the ground. It split the planet's surface wide open, sending rocks tumbling down into the depths below. And from within the crack, something began to emerge. It was huge, dark, and imposing. It seemed to rise out of the earth itself. An enormous, shifting mass of rock and metal. It looked like some kind of ancient construct, but alive. Its shape wasn't clearly defined, and its surface seemed to change as it moved, as though it were part of the planet's very core. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, and it seemed to be heading straight toward the colony. "We need to get back to the command center, now," Sarah shouted. The team ran, their feet pounding against the uneven ground as the strange, monstrous shape loomed behind them. Every step felt like the earth itself was shaking beneath their feet. The unknown force they had triggered in the ruin had unleashed something far more terrifying than they could have imagined. As they reached the colony, Sarah's heart sank. The first line of defense was already under attack. The giant, shifting mass had reached the outskirts, its presence terrifying the soldiers who scrambled to defend the walls. But there was no way to fight something like this. No weapons could stop it, not unless they understood what it was, and what was controlling it. "We can't hold them off like this," Kara yelled as she rushed inside the command center. "Then we'll need to figure out what we're really dealing with," Sarah said, her eyes scanning the chaos outside. The soldiers were preparing for battle, but the giant force outside was unlike anything they had prepared for. Caleb stood by his station, frantically tapping his console. "I think I have an idea, but we need to act fast. The device in the ruin. I think it's the key to understanding this creature, whatever it is. It's the heart of the planet. It's calling it, somehow." Sarah turned to him, her mind racing. "How do we stop it? How do we shut it down?" "We need to access the device again," Caleb said, urgency in his voice. "But we'll need a direct connection, and the colony's systems aren't powerful enough to break through the interference. The only way to stop this thing is to get back to the ruin and use the device's energy to disrupt its control over the planet." "You're saying we have to go back to the ruin?" Kara asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "After what happened there?" "We don't have a choice," Sarah replied firmly. "We don't understand it fully, but it's the only way to stop this, before we lose everything." The team knew what they had to do. It was the only option, but it was also the most dangerous one. The ground beneath them was unstable, and the mysterious, monstrous force was drawing closer with each passing moment. They had no time to waste. They quickly gathered their weapons, prepared their equipment, and made their way back to the ruins, with no idea what awaited them this time. The air was thick with tension, and Sarah's mind was consumed with thoughts of what they had to do. The fate of the colony, and perhaps humanity itself, now rested on the secrets buried deep within the planet. But as they neared the site, Sarah's gut tightened. There was no telling what might happen next. Had they triggered something they couldn't undo? Or was this the final chance they had to save everything they had fought for? The unknown creature and the collapsing world around them were closing in fast, and they had no more time to think. The battle for survival. The journey back to the ruin felt like an eternity. The ground continued to tremble beneath their feet as the strange, monstrous creature moved closer to the colony. The air was thick with the sound of its approach, low, rumbling, almost as if it were growling from deep within the planet. The team moved quickly, but there was a palpable sense of urgency. Every second counted. As they neared the ruin, Sarah's eyes scanned the horizon. The dark, shifting mass was visible in the distance, its shape now unmistakable, a massive, living construct, rising from the depths of the planet's core. It seemed to grow larger with each passing moment, its form shifting and morphing, as though the planet itself was rearranging to make room for it. Whatever the creature was, it was a force of nature, and it was heading straight for the colony. "How much farther?" Kara asked, her voice strained with impatience. "We're almost there," Sarah replied, her jaw clenched. "Keep moving." The path to the ruin had become treacherous. The ground had started to split open in places, revealing deep chasms. The earth groaned under the weight of the creature, its movements shaking the very foundation of the planet. The team kept their eyes forward, focused on reaching their goal. Finally, they arrived at the entrance to the ruin. The ancient stone archway stood like a silent sentinel, untouched by the chaos around it. But this time, things felt different. The air was thick with tension. The strange energy that had pulsed from the device before seemed stronger, more intense. Caleb quickly moved to the device at the center of the chamber. It hummed with power, but the faint glow that had once seemed like a faint beacon of hope now felt ominous. The ground beneath them shook again, and dust rained down from the ceiling as the creature's presence grew stronger. "We need to act fast," Caleb shouted, tapping at the console and trying to make sense of the data. "I think I can access the device's energy, but I need time. We have to hold them off while I work." Kara immediately moved to a defensive position, her weapon ready. "We'll buy you as much time as we can. Just get it done, Caleb." Sarah turned to Caleb, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Do what you have to do. We're counting on you." As Caleb worked furiously to access the device's core, the air grew heavier, the rumble of the creature's movements growing louder with each passing moment. The planet itself seemed to be reacting to their presence. The walls of the ruin cracked, and pieces of stone began to fall from above. The entire structure seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Outside, the monstrous creature had arrived, and with it came a new wave of tremors. The team could hear it now, its deep, guttural roar as it loomed just beyond the entrance. The first of its tendrils reached into the ruin, sending shockwaves through the ground. "It's here," Kara said, her voice tight with determination. "We can't let it get closer." The first wave of the creature's attack came swiftly. Massive stone-like limbs shot through the ground, reaching into the ruin like claws. The team fought back, firing at the limbs as they tore through the walls and the earth around them. Each strike from the creature was enough to shake the ruin to its very core. Sarah moved quickly, firing her weapon at the tendrils that reached for them. "Keep it away from Caleb," she shouted. "We need him to finish the job." Kara was right beside her, her rifle aimed at another one of the tendrils. "We'll hold them off. Just keep working, Caleb." Caleb's face was drenched with sweat, his fingers flying across the console. The energy from the device seemed to be pulsing more intensely now, the hum growing louder as it drew more power. Caleb's voice came out strained, his hands trembling. "I'm close, just a little longer." The creature outside roared again, and the walls of the ruin shook violently. A massive limb shot forward, smashing into the ruin with terrifying force. Rocks and debris fell all around them, but Sarah and Kara stood firm, firing at anything that moved. The monster outside was relentless, but they couldn't let it break through. Finally, Caleb spoke through gritted teeth. "I've done it. The device is connected. Now we need to redirect its power before the creature makes its final move." The team's eyes widened. "Redirect it?" Sarah asked, not fully understanding what Caleb meant. "The device can harness the energy from the planet's core," Caleb explained quickly. "We can use that energy to create a force field, a shield to stop the creature." "We don't have much time, Caleb," Kara shouted as another massive tendril smashed into the ruin. Caleb nodded, his fingers working quickly to manipulate the energy. The device's hum grew louder, vibrating with an intensity that rattled the walls around them. "It's almost done. We just need a few more seconds." The monster's final push came with terrifying speed. The ground beneath them cracked wide open as the creature's full force erupted into the ruin, its limbs flailing toward them. Dust and debris filled the air as the tendrils reached for the team. "Hold on," Sarah yelled as she fired at the creature's limbs, but it was no use. The creature's sheer size and strength were overwhelming. Just as the creature's massive tendrils reached the center of the ruin, a surge of energy erupted from the device, enveloping the team. Sarah, Kara, and Caleb stood frozen for a moment, their hearts pounding in their chests. The ruins were silent now, the echoes of the creature's death slowly fading. The tremors had stopped. The shield dropped, and the energy from the device ceased, leaving only the eerie stillness behind. We did it," Caleb said, his voice barely above a whisper, as if not quite believing what they had just witnessed. Sarah's expression softened slightly. "We did, but we still don't know what that creature was or who created it. The planet, it's still a mystery." Kara exhaled, lowering her weapon. "We've bought ourselves some time, at least." "Time," Sarah echoed, her voice laced with uncertainty. "But for what? The creature is gone, but the danger is still here. This planet, whatever it is, it's not over." There was a long pause as the team stood together, the weight of their victory settling in. They had survived against the odds once again, but Sarah knew this was only one battle in a much larger war. The mystery of the planet, the secrets buried beneath its surface, were far from over. Caleb was the first to speak, his voice quiet. "We've stopped the creature for now, but we need to figure out why it was here in the first place. We need to know why the planet's core is so connected to it, what was controlling it, and who built this prison." Sarah looked out at the horizon, the winds now calm, the oppressive atmosphere beginning to lift. She knew he was right. The creature may have been destroyed, but they hadn't even begun to understand what was truly happening on this planet. They needed to find out the truth, not just for themselves, but for the future of humanity. "There's more to this story," Sarah said, her voice filled with determination. "And we're going to find it. The triumphant future." The battle was over, but the war was far from won. As Sarah, Kara, and Caleb stood among the remains of the ruin, the atmosphere around them seemed to shift. The earth, once trembling under the weight of the creature, now felt still, almost peaceful. The energy that had once surged from the device faded, leaving behind an eerie calm. But despite the silence, Sarah knew that this calm was only temporary. "We've won this battle," Sarah said, her voice steady but heavy with thought. But the real question is, what comes next? The team stood there for a few moments, the enormity of what they had just accomplished sinking in. The creature was no more, but the questions surrounding it. And the planet itself remained. The ruin had collapsed behind them, but the energy from the device had altered something deep within the planet's core. Caleb's theories about the connection between the creature and the planet's energy were only half-formed. They had stopped the immediate threat, but Sarah felt certain that the answers they needed were still buried somewhere deep beneath the surface. Kara broke the silence. I can't believe we actually did it. That thing was huge, and now it's gone. It's gone, but the planet is still unstable, Sarah said. I have a feeling we've only scratched the surface of what's really going on here. We don't know what that creature was, where it came from, or why it was here. And that's something we need to understand before we face something worse. Caleb looked over the ruin, his mind still racing with questions. I agree. The energy signatures from the device weren't just tied to the creature. They were connected to the planet itself. And the planet's core. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. There's so much more here that we don't understand. Sarah's gaze lingered on the horizon. The planet, which had seemed like a barren, hostile place just days ago, now felt like something far more complex. There was life here, in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. And somewhere, deep within, were the answers they needed. We'll need to keep searching, Sarah said, her voice resolute. We can't leave until we know what's really going on. The future of humanity depends on it. Kara nodded, her face set with determination. We'll find out what happened here. We'll uncover every secret this planet holds. But we're not alone in this anymore, Sarah. We've survived. And together, we'll make sure we stay that way. For a moment, Sarah allowed herself a small smile, a glimmer of hope in the midst of all the uncertainty. They had made it this far, against impossible odds. And with everything they had learned, she knew they would go even further. There's one thing we know for sure, Sarah said. We're not giving up. We never do. As they turned to make their way back to the colony, the wind seemed to whisper around them, carrying with it the weight of all that had happened and all that still lay ahead. The battle had been won, but the war, if it could even be called that, was just beginning. The creature may have been destroyed, but the true enemy, the forces that had created it, the reasons this planet had been turned into a prison, remained a mystery. But they would uncover it. They would face whatever came next, because they were humans. And no matter the odds, no matter the dangers, they never gave up. They never stopped fighting.